The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.
Welcome to the David Pakman Show, where we look for progressive solutions that even conservatives could get behind if they understood them. I'm your host, David Pakman, joining you from the new world headquarters, Lewis, of the David Pakman Show in none other than Boston, Massachusetts. If you paid any attention to the news over the weekend, you probably heard that a Planned Parenthood was the location in Colorado Springs, Colorado, of horrible, horrible violence done by a white American anti-Obama, anti-abortion terrorist. His name, Robert Louis Dear. Sounds kind of weird. Sounds like you're calling someone, hey, Robert Louis Dear, could you come to the table? But that is the name, Lewis, of the man that perpetrated, allegedly, I guess, even though he gave himself up and basically explained why he did it, killed 3 people and injured 9 people during the shooting and the 5-hour standoff that ensued eventually at, as I mentioned, a Planned Parenthood clinic in Colorado Springs, Colorado. One of the 3 dead, a police officer. Dear was the subject of at least 9 investigations by law enforcement officials when he lived in North Carolina and South Carolina before eventually moving to Colorado, where this crime took place. He said that President Obama is ruining American, according to a neighbor of Dear's. Zygmunt Post also told BuzzFeed that he was a neighbor of Dear's in Hartford, Colorado, and that the man once was handing out anti-Obama pamphlets. Dear said to authorities that he is anti-abortion. He is also anti-government. And he also made remarks about, quote, baby parts to investigators after his surrender. Now, where on earth could this man, Robert Louis Dear, where could he have gotten the idea about baby parts at a Planned Parenthood? It happens to coincide with that gutter garbage we've been hearing about from the right about Planned Parenthood. And we've heard it parroted on the national stage during Republican presidential primary debates by none other than Carly Fiorina. This stuff has an impact, and we are seeing it right now, aren't we?
It does. Of course, there's still the mental health part of the story, right?
Sure.
Is this an insane person who is highly impressionable? Did he just, he's schizophrenic? What is he? I guess we're still waiting on that information, but certainly, Dave, spreading around misinformation like that and the fear-mongering and the craziness we saw from the media does not help.
Now, there's another narrative that the conspiracy theorists are latching onto here, and that is related to Robert Louis Dear's voter registration card, which lists his gender reportedly as female. So immediately, the conspiracy theorists start saying, well, this is a left-wing transgender person who committed the shooting, and this is all a left-wing problem. And as usual, the moderate white Christians haven't denounced the shooting as an act of terrorism, as they often demand any Muslim do when a Muslim commits an act of terror, because no one expects them to, right, Lewis? Unlike with Muslims, we never hear, hey, here's just a white guy, right? White, casually Christian guy, horrible, horrible, heinous act, not representative of what most Christians would ever be capable of or interested in doing. No one calls for the average Christian to denounce this in the way that we call for the average Muslim to denounce any act of terror committed by a Muslim. Now, we've talked about it. We are not the PC police. We've talked about the reality that today in 2015, I'm getting so excited I punched the microphone, Lewis. Today in 2015, a higher share of Muslims have what I would call radical beliefs than the share of Christians in the U.S. that have what I would call radical beliefs. Regardless, right? We don't hear the same demands made on the moderate Christians when someone like this dude commits terror.
No. Is that because we're a Christian nation, right?
Sure.
And when you're a Christian nation, if ISIS commits a bombing in Turkey,
right,
are Muslims in that country going to, or atheists or agnostics in that country going to say to Muslims, it's all a Muslim country, are you going to denounce this? Probably not, because it's kind of just assumed that, well, of course, this is not representative of all of Islam. Otherwise, Turkey would be in a constant state of explosions all the time. So maybe it's kind of the same thing here. I don't know.
We're seeing some interesting similarities, no question about it. So bottom line here, as we know, most acts of domestic terrorism in the United States conducted by white Christian men, full stop. Now, on Fox News could not even wait for the body count to be finalized before going on the offensive over this Planned Parenthood shooting in Colorado Springs, Colorado. They brought on none other than Bo Dietl, the guy who referred to Muslims famously a few years ago as, quote, yabba dabba doos. He was commenting on what was then an active shooter scenario in Colorado, right? We didn't even know how many people died yet. We didn't have all the facts. We didn't know anything. And he decided in this completely incomprehensible rant to say, well, we should have already gone in and taken out the shooter without knowing much of anything of what was going on, saying that the lack of militarization of police departments as a result of President Obama in response to what's been going on overseas is partially to blame here. If you couldn't follow the logic of that, I couldn't either. But let's take a look here at how skillfully, masterfully, Bo Dietl connects this right-wing terror in Colorado to President Obama demilitarizing the police. Let's listen to it.
Yeah, but we were getting some reports earlier and talking about the Justice Department and stripping local law enforcement officers of that, much needed tactical supplies, military style equipment after Ferguson and whatnot and the investigations that happened. And you just think about a situation like this where the police need every available resource to put down an active shooter situation, especially someone that seems to be heavily armed. It doesn't make sense to me why we would handicap our police officers when we need them so much in a crisis situation like this.
Again, this is our president acting like a fool again. I mean, to say something like this, we noticed when the attacks occurred in Paris, when the cops were in their car getting attacked, we have to prepare ourselves. This is a war. We're against terrorists, against this country. It's going to open up here in America, and we got to be prepared. And we also got to start training all our officers in the use of high-powered equipment. We're dealing with bad people here. Our little 9mm are not going to do anything against somebody with an AK-47. So let's not believe that we're in fairyland here.
They don't have military-style equipment because of Obama. What on earth does a tank or shoulder-mounted RPG do for you in this situation?
And he's kind of saying this is a war. These are bad people we're dealing with. I mean, they're talking about the Colorado shooting.
Right.
But he's, I guess, not really pointing out, maybe saying that there's no difference between the people who shot up Paris and the guy who shot up this Planned Parenthood clinic. And, is there much of a difference?
Well, this is the party of personal responsibility, right? I mean, you've got this shooter who hates Planned Parenthood and hates Obama and decided to shoot up Planned Parenthood in part because of stuff he heard about baby parts being sold by Planned Parenthood. President Obama is the guy we need to be looking at because he didn't apparently do what he needed to do after the Paris shooting, which is militarize the police force. Let's blame Obama for the rise of right-wing, mostly Christian terror in the United States. That's the Bo Dietl narrative.
Yeah, it's kind of what happened here was that this guy was under investigation. Authorities were aware of this person. Right. And so that is what we need to be talking about. Why was not, perhaps we needed to keep a closer eye on him. But I don't think that police having rocket launchers and grenade launchers was going to stop this attack.
And it certainly wasn't going to bring it to a more satisfactory conclusion. That's absolutely for sure. Maybe it is Obama's fault, right? I mean, it's true. After we found out about all those baby parts being sold by Planned Parenthood, fake videos, of course, Obama didn't close every Planned Parenthood. And if he had, there would have been no Planned Parenthood for Robert Lewis Deere to go after.
That's stretch, Dave. That's even more of a stretch than Bo here, I think, is handing us. But
Turkish Prime Minister Ahmet Davutoğlu revealed that he personally gave the order to down the Russian Su-24 fighter jet that led to the death of one pilot. Despite all the warnings, we had to destroy the aircraft, said Davutoğlu. to a meeting of his AK party going on and saying the Turkish armed forces carried out orders given by me personally. Both Davutoğlu and Turkey's President Erdogan, who is the commander-in-chief of the nation's armed forces, I should mention, continued to defend this decision to shoot down the Russian Su-24 because the country has a right to defend itself, and that includes defending its national airspace. And they insist that the Su-24 aircraft made an incursion into Turkish airspace that lasted 17 seconds, and that is the time during which it was shot down. There was a letter sent to the UN Security Council by the United Nations, by Turkey's permanent mission to the United Nations, rather, and it says that for 17 seconds, the Russian Su-24 was inside Turkish territory, and this is where it gets really interesting. NATO announced that they agree with Turkey's claim, and they pledged to stand in solidarity with Turkey's decision to shoot down this Russian plane. If you're skeptical that this is just about Turkey defending their sovereignty and their borders and their airspace, the question is, what does Turkey have to gain from this, right? This appears to be a move to start creating more tension with Russia to prevent a West plus Russia coalition to fight ISIS. And this is the type of thing we're seeing French President Francois Hollande attempt to do after the horrible attacks in Paris recently. In fact, right after this happened, the cover of French newspaper Le Figaro said, quote, Turkey sabotages coalition against ISIS by shooting down this Russian plane. So this was probably something that in Turkey they were just waiting for. Wait for any misstep by Russia. We'll get entangled and we will break up this possible coalition.
It could very well be. Am I comfortable saying 100% that's the case? No.
But are you ever comfortable saying anything 100%?
I can 100% say that your hair is looking better than usual today.
Thank you.
You got your product back. But look, Russia responded, right? They said, no, we're not going to go to war. They imposed sanctions immediately. There is something to be said for just not allowing Russia to bully you, because Russia has a tendency to be a bully. At
the same time, ever since Paris, right? The Russians haven't said anything against the West. The U.S. and EU haven't said anything anti-Russian or against Assad either. Now, it may be, well, people are preoccupied with other things. It's abundantly clear that Erdogan's aim is to get rid of Assad. We know that Russia has been getting involved to try to maybe prevent the ousting of Assad. They claim it's just about fighting ISIS. So it's pretty clear that there are conflicts of interest here and drastically different goals, and this is a sort of interesting way to get in the middle of it. And let's not forget, I want to remind you, Lewis, we have this list of things that the Turkey's Erdogan has done, and we have this list that we will show people. He has censored genitalia and proper names of genitalia from biology textbooks. He has banned the military from watching shows with nudity like Game of Thrones. He took issue with kissing on daytime television. He rewrote history to make it more patriotic. He says Islam positions women for motherhood and that you just can't explain that to feminists. And he also blamed a mining disaster on Jews when Jews clearly had nothing to do with it. And most recently said he is increasingly against the internet. So we know what type of administration we're dealing with in Turkey, Lewis. In many ways, Turkey considered one of the more moderate countries of the region, but certainly the statements we've seen over the last 2 years from Erdogan don't suggest that much moderation, do they?
No, he seems to be very religious, and he kind of takes after some other dictators in that region in some ways, but
and not in other ways.
Right. It's still considered a secular nation, and like we said, as far as Muslim countries go, it's very progressive. But we're not fans of the guy, Dave. He's pretty extreme himself.
That's for sure. If you believe in free speech, how could you possibly think that Erdogan is the guy for you? You just couldn't, unless you don't understand what free speech is, and many people don't, as we increasingly are aware of. Let's take a break. I'm on Twitter at dpacman. Lewis is on Twitter at lewismotamedy.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
Our program is made possible by our viewers who sign up and become members. You can do that at davidpakman.com/membership. Catherine Dixon recently did exactly that, and she is today's member of the day. You can join Catherine, get all of the great membership benefits, including the members-only bonus show at davidpakman.com/membership. And for a little while longer, if you go to davidpakman.com/calendar16, you can get yourself a free 2016 Patriot Mail David Pakman Show calendar, free at davidpakman.com/calendar16 with, of course, a yearly membership. If you just want to buy the calendar, by all means, you can do that at davidpakman.com/calendar16 as well. Let's talk a little bit about a TV show that I don't particularly like. I'm talking, of course, about you shopping on Amazon through davidpakman.com/Amazon. If you ever shop on Amazon, you can support the work we do by going to davidpakman.com/Amazon, and then everything you buy will send us a little kickback. The holiday buying season is ramping up. If you're participating, if you have gifts to buy or just stuff for yourself or books for next semester, whatever, use the link. Lewis, somebody purchased through our link the complete series of Friends, the sitcom Friends, on Blu-ray. Do you like the show Friends?
I hate it. I think it's the most overrated sitcom of all time. I think the writing is terrible. I think the acting is terrible. It's not funny. And I don't understand the appeal.
I don't either. I really don't either. And I found a handful of moments. My girlfriend loves the show, where she's watching it and something happens that is somewhat funny, right? I mean, it's somewhat funny. It warrants a chuckle, or there's like a little clever line. I just do not get the appeal of Friends. If someone could explain it to me, I'm open to changing my mind. I've seen many episodes at this point, not in a very concentrated manner, but I've been around as it's playing, and I just don't get the appeal.
I mean, there are plenty of other shows that follow the same formula, and I find that I don't like any of them. How I Met Your Mother is kind of a similar type thing. I don't think that show was funny at all. Maybe I'm just a comedy snob, Dave.
Right.
Could that be it?
That's very possible, and I think many in our audience will concur with that. Also, a number of turkey fryers purchased through our Amazon link, presumably to fry an entire turkey for Thanksgiving. And I've seen a bunch of videos, Lewis, of just horrible accidents with these turkey fryers where people think it's funny to heat the oil up more than it needs to be or drop the turkey in from 10 feet up. Don't people usually burn down about 1 or 2 houses a year frying a turkey on Thanksgiving?
It's a pretty common thing. Yes, you gotta be very careful with those, Dave. I personally am not into the fried turkey. I don't own a fryer. I'd prefer a smoked turkey over that.
I saw someone that did that over Thanksgiving, and apparently it was stunningly good. That is.
It sounds pretty good. Yeah, smoked turkey's great.
davidpakman.com/Amazon if you ever shop on Amazon. Hey, it's getting really bad for Donald Trump. The new civil rights movement is reporting that I don't even know how to set this up. So Donald Trump told this lie that, quote, thousands and thousands of Muslim Americans in Jersey City, New Jersey, were cheering and celebrating the 9/11 attacks. And there's a reporter named Serge Kovaleski who was a reporter for the Washington Post back on September 11th of 2001. And he wrote about police interviewing people accused of allegedly celebrating the attacks, and none of the accusations were actually true. So he has written about this extensively. He happens to have a physical disability which limits the functioning of his joints. He carries himself in a way that is notably not what you would typically see for an individual that is completely able-bodied. And on Tuesday, Donald Trump mocked Kovaleski And by every reasonable analysis of the video, it seemed like Trump was motioning and mimicking Kovaleski's disability. Now, I'm going to play the video for you. If you are only listening to this, you can easily find the video online. Let's take a look at the video, and then we'll talk about what's going on here.
Written by a nice reporter. Now the poor guy, you got to see this guy. Oh, I don't know what I said. I don't remember. He's going like, I don't remember. Oh, maybe that's what I said. This is 14 years ago. They didn't do a retraction.
That reporter he is talking about is Serge Kovaleski, who now works for the New York Times. As you can see right there, he suffers from a chronic condition that impairs movement of his arms. A Times spokesman says they find it outrageous that Trump would ridicule the man's appearance.
Yeah, it's outrageous that Donald Trump would ridicule someone's appearance instead of the substance of what they say, right? I mean, he only has done it to Carly Fiorina. He did it to Rand Paul. It's completely crazy, right? Because there's no track record of Donald Trump of ridiculing people's appearance.
Let's not forget Rosie O'Donnell.
Naturally.
That's a big one. Yes, Trump likes to do that. And
he's fixated on people's appearance, even that of his own daughter, who he seems obsessed with.
Yes, and his own, Dave. He has said many times, he talks about how handsome he is. And it's, Dave, are we going to fall into this trap too? I mean, I don't think he's a very good-looking guy, but he thinks he's incredibly handsome.
Donald Trump.
So it's kind of like, yeah.
I couldn't care less what Donald Trump looks like. What I do care about is that then Trump really went off the rails, because after this controversy blew up, he tried to deny that he was making fun of Kovaleski's physical condition by saying, I have no idea who this reporter is. I don't know what he looks like. I don't know what his level of intelligence is. I don't know if he's J.J. Watt or Muhammad Ali. Despite having one of the greatest memories, I don't remember ever having met him. Unfortunately, that is not true. They met many, many times. Kovaleski, in fact, saying Donald and I were on a first-name basis for years. I've interviewed him in his office. I've talked to him at press conferences. I would say I've met him around a dozen times. What do you think is the truth here, right? I mean, it's very... Donald Trump has never mocked anybody else that I'm aware of by mimicking what happens to be the physical disability of this particular reporter. Then he claims he has a great memory, but he's never met him. He's actually met him 12 times.
I really doubt that Serge is lying about meeting Donald Trump. So is it possible that Trump has a poor memory? Maybe. Maybe he's telling the truth about that. But I don't think there's any denying that he's mocking the appearance, or, mocking the way this guy moves around or whatever.
Very little doubt whatsoever. And if Trump's tax plan and foreign policy ideas don't scare you, you should probably be put off by this. But at the same time, if you think Trump's foreign policy and tax ideas are reasonable, maybe you don't care if he mocks someone's physical disability. I don't know. So a lot of Thanksgiving clips and stories done on all sorts of corporate media outlets. Cook this, cook that. Here's how to fry turkey. Here's, Thanksgiving manners, whatever. And Fox News falling face first into just parroting stereotypes about black people. And, we've heard a lot of these before. And it's almost weird to even have to explain this, but in case you aren't aware of this, there are food stereotypes around many different cultures. And around African Americans, those food stereotypes are, African Americans love fried chicken. And, African Americans love watermelon. By the way, fried chicken and watermelon, who doesn't like fried chicken and watermelon? Two of my favorite foods. I'm certainly not black. Another one of these is, black people like flavored sodas and drinks like grape and orange soda, etc. And they like Kool-Aid. Kool-Aid, of course, the powder that is added to water or some other liquid to make a drink. So Fox News host Harris Faulkner, who's black, goes on Fox and Friends to show how she makes peach cobbler. And she brings on her daughter, and it's all very nice and on the up and up. Very nice segment. And Brian Kilmeade, all of a sudden, as a complete non sequitur, asks Harris Faulkner whether she makes Kool-Aid. I mean, it connects to absolutely nothing. Here's the video.
A recipe, you're gonna make peach cobbler.
We are, and good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
You are my
Good
friend.
morning.
So good to see you.
Good morning.
Great to see you. Hi, Bella.
Bella, tell them what you're gonna do.
I'm going to pour the mixture into the bowl.
All right, Bella has added all
You're
the...
done, stir, sweetie?
So far.
All right,
This?
so now I'm going to take my peaches and I'm just going to lay
Which is great that they're
them
canned, by
in
the way,
here.
because you can do this any time of the year.
You can do
Anytime.
this.
I love
I do
that.
it in the summer,
So
and I put fresh strawberries in here too.
Oh, what a good idea.
Right?
Make Kool-Aid?
That's another.
I'm going to try this.
Do I do what?
Make Kool-Aid.
No, I don't make Kool-Aid,
that
but
reminds
I
me of
made
the
an
summer.
adult beverage for us.
She does. She brought us a good one.
Boom, boom, boom.
And then
when you're done, you sprinkle the
Harris
sugar.
Faulkner, through the magic of...
350, 60 minutes.
Through the magic of
Okay.
television, it winds up...
The entire segment seems so fake, right? They have the daughter on talking about the peach cobbler, and it's mostly all pre-made. And the only thing that seems real is Brian Kilmeade's genuine curiosity about whether black families really make Kool-Aid when they make peach cobbler. That's the realest part of this segment.
Yes, and that he lacks the filter to know that that might be something you don't want to say on air. Maybe you ask after the segment, but it's great. I love the reaction on the face of the guy next to him.
Steve Doocy, who it takes a lot to shock Steve Doocy back into coherence, he perks up right away.
Yeah.
And then Elizabeth Hasselbeck has the common sense to pretend she didn't even hear it and just talk about how great it is that you can use canned peaches or whatever on the thing. I mean, just resounding stupidity on Fox News. And you bring on the black anchor and then you ask her about the Kool-Aid. It's just, none of this makes any sense. And people are eating it up. People just love these because these are family-friendly segments, Louis.
Yes, but Faulkner's response was great. She didn't just say, "Oh no, I don't make Kool-Aid," and then moved on. She said, "No, I don't make Kool-Aid." Why are you asking me this?
So no surprise. I mean, this stuff happens all the time on Fox. Let's take a break. We have a great interview coming up. And later, does welfare make people lazy? Republicans say it does, but does it? We'll talk about that.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
I'm joined today by Kert Davies, who's director of the Climate Investigation Center. It's a research group that works to expose the anti-environmental movement, including those that try to stall and block policy solutions to climate change. Kert, you were involved in this extraordinary investigation into Willie Soon and the way in which climate denial is funded. Before we talk specifically about that investigation, talk to us generally about why, in spite of the fact that the overwhelming mountain of scientific evidence points to humans impacting the climate on Earth, we still see so many of the same few climate skeptics cited time after time by the deniers. Why are we seeing that?
Well, first of all, thanks for having me on the show. And this is one of my favorite subjects, and I kind of obsess about the answer to your question. So I could go on for hours, but we don't have that much time. The basic thing is that they know, these fossil fuel corporations who don't want us to get down and solve climate change, to start implementing, real energy policy that cuts out fossil fuels, basically. They know that science is the engine that drives policy along, that, if we are not certain about whether the Hudson River is polluted, we won't do anything about it. If we're not certain that climate change is caused by fossil fuel burning, we won't do anything about it. So they've funded their own echo chamber. They've sort of cultivated people who will say things that the companies themselves can't be caught dead saying. And Willie Soon is a perfect example of this. He and his ally there at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics, Sally Baliunas, who retired suddenly in 2009, for years have denied the ozone hole. They've denied climate change. They say it's caused by sunspots or variations in the sun. The warming we're seeing today is caused by something else. And Exxon funded them, the Koch Foundation funded them, American Petroleum Institute, Southern Company, a huge utility based in Georgia, all funded Willie Soon to put this counter narrative out that the science is uncertain or that there are other things to explain the warming that we're experiencing.
Talk to us a little bit about, let's stick with Willie Soon because it's just a good example, a microcosm of so much of what's going on. Willie Soon, a solar physicist, as you mentioned, at the Harvard-Smithsonian Center for Astrophysics. He claims all of the different things you talked about, including changes in temperature due merely to sunspots, just sort of the natural cyclical reality of the sun. How is he funded specifically? In other words, we might have this idea in our heads that someone comes to him and says, listen, Willie, we need you to say these things. Here's some money. But that's not really the way it actually happens.
No, in fact, it's more complicated than that. He actually believes what he's saying. It's not like they are literally manufacturing doubt, or they are, finding a scientist and say, go lie for us. They have found scientists that think climate change isn't real. And then they have given them a megaphone and they've given them funding. If you go back to a document that was leaked in 1998, now I'm getting some echo. I'm sorry. Good on your end?
Yeah, we're fine.
Oh, apologize. So in 1998, there was a document that was leaked to the New York Times that showed a multi-million-dollar plan to funnel money from industry trade associations through front groups to basically media-trained scientists and give them venues to talk, to insert uncertainty into the dialogue. And they explicitly say victory will be achieved when media, legislators, even science teachers believe there is uncertainty. Willie Soon was a direct conduit where they sent money straight to his institution to pay for his research, and the payback was Willie Soon publishing peer-reviewed literature in the scientific journals that would generate some uncertainty. So it's sort of a feeder system that they developed, a network of front groups being libertarian, anti-environmental, anti-regulatory organizations, and trade associations like the American Petroleum Institute. They run money through those groups and they prop up these scientists in the public dialogue. So there are many of them.
It would be sort of too obvious if they just say, hey, we want you to say these things that you may not believe. The smarter way to go about it is, fine, if only this tiny percentage share our views, let's exclusively fund those and make them prominent and known.
That's exactly right. And what's fantastic about this new Exxon investigation that's rolled out over the past couple of months through a group called Inside Climate News, an online news source on climate change, and a group at Columbia School of Journalism working with the LA Times, they both have revealed old Exxon documents showing that Exxon knew much more about climate science than we previously knew they did. And then they went on to fund people like Willie Soon. In one case, there's a document from the mid-90s where mobile oil scientists are briefing the entire industrial coalition, the Global Climate Coalition, which was this front group set up to block the Kyoto Protocol and block the UN process that's happening right now in Paris. They had a whole coalition to stop that. Their own scientists said arguments like Willie Soon's, sunspots, arguments that there's a divergence in the temperature record, they basically knock down each of those arguments and say they really don't hold water to explain the warming that we're seeing. And then they didn't include that in the final draft that went public of that document. So this private conversation inside the industrial bloc, they knew these arguments didn't hold water. Exxon goes on to promote those same arguments in years subsequent.
Let me ask you a little bit, Kert, and we're speaking with Kert Davies, director of the Climate Investigation Center. Increasingly, we are seeing from the sort of the usual suspects, the talking point touted that, hey, everything's fine as far as ice melt, that we now see more ice than ever in the Arctic, for example. Have you investigated that? What's going on with that, the resurgence of that talking point that we're hearing lately?
Well, first of all, it's one of the biggest calamities, the meltdown of the Greenland ice sheet and West Antarctic ice sheets. If they proceed as they are right now, we are in for a lot more sea level rise. It's where most of the ice that's above sea level on Earth is being stored right now. If all that melts, we get like 30 feet of sea level rise. It's a big deal. So cities like New York, Miami, Philadelphia, others are buried. So that's the reason that they don't want that to be true, or don't want that the uptake of that risk to be seen in the public dialogue. The resurgence is because it's getting worse, and also because there is increased press attention to it. And so the counter narrative is rising up.
And talk a little bit about where, they claim to have science on their side, right? They claim to say, hey, if we just look at the volume of this ice, we have actually seen an increase. And of course, what they would like to see follow from that is, if there's more ice, clearly things aren't warming, everything's fine, look in the other direction.
That's right. And there is no evidence that that is occurring in the north. In Antarctica, there was a study just a little while ago that showed more snowfall than they had previously measured in other parts of Antarctica that were adding ice incrementally. But the scientists concluded it wouldn't balance out the ice that's being lost off of the West Antarctic ice sheet, which is really the biggest chunk that's falling into the ocean on a regular basis. So ice is a big question. You could call it an uncertainty, but all the news is bad. So it's not the best way to think about this is the deniers characterize it as a house of cards argument, that if one piece of the scientific puzzle is missing, everything falls away. It's not true. The better way to look at it is like a giant jigsaw puzzle. And yes, in all science, there is continuing exploration and fine point certainty. But the bigger the picture gets, you sort of know the picture before you're done the puzzle, is the way to look at it. You know this is a picture of a pretty grim scene. Adding the other pieces are not going to make that scene into some beautiful sunrise. So the argument that we are missing information and that's a reason not to act is completely destructive.
Right, and not to mention that even if scientists are wrong about 80% of their predictions, just if they're right on 20%, we've still got a lot of stuff to figure out, and you're absolutely spot on with that. We've been speaking with Kert Davies, director of the Climate Investigation Center. Kert, thanks so much for talking to us and for your investigation.
Hey, great, anytime, thank you.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com. Welcome back to the David Pakman Show.
We all know that right-wing talking point about welfare making people lazy. Why work when you can get stuff for free? We need to incentivize people to get to work rather than to stay off of work. Of course, the same people say that there aren't enough jobs. So why they would want more competition for the few jobs they claim exist, I don't know. But let's ignore that discrepancy for now. Do welfare programs make people lazy or not? We have a new study from MIT and Harvard here in Boston, Massachusetts. It looked at 7 different experiments that explored whether welfare programs discourage work and thus cause people to choose not to work in order to continue collecting their their welfare benefits. Not a single study of the 7 showed that welfare programs make people lazy. The data were also from vastly different countries, which counters the response that it's different in the United States. The studies looked at work and welfare in Mexico, Nicaragua, Honduras, Philippines, Indonesia, and Morocco. Take a look at this image, which shows you that 0 of the 7 programs saw a statistically significant change in either employment levels or hours worked per week when comparing people with and without the welfare benefits. Now, you'll notice that in some trials, work went up when there were welfare benefits added. In others, work went down. In none of these instances was the change substantial. There's a 95% confidence interval for how the programs affected the employment rate, and it ranges from 1.6 percentage points down to 0.9 percentage points up. Lewis, essentially no impact on work based on the welfare programs.
No, and I think what we can deduce from this is that people are lazy regardless of welfare. And no matter what's going on, Dave, people are lazy, and welfare isn't going to make you more lazy if you're, inherently lazy to begin with.
Most people I know who want to work, and they would be wanting to work no matter what the situation is. And if you offer some welfare programs, just common sense tells us they're not going to say, well, I'll just sit home then and do nothing. Very few people, I can think of very few people
would
that
go
I know.
crazy doing that.
A lot of people would go absolutely crazy doing that. And we also have data from the U.S. The Earned Income Tax Credit is one of the biggest programs for sort of subsidizing the adult community. And there is evidence showing that the Earned Income Tax Credit encourages work, usually by pulling single parents into the workforce. So it has a sort of anti-poverty impact above and beyond the actual cash that the tax credit provides to families. The takeaway here is poorly designed social programs can deter work. If you look at aid to families with dependent children, studies of that program found that it did have an impact on employment. It decreased the number of hours worked. Properly designed and implemented welfare programs do not reduce the desire of people to work. They don't make people lazy. We got to get off the right-wing talking points.
Yeah, it's not really helping, Dave. If you're worried about people taking advantage of welfare, try to put them to work instead of trying to ruin people's lives by getting rid of it altogether, right?
Absolutely. 26-year-old Dexter Bell committed any number of rapes in Brooklyn, New York in 2013 after being previously convicted in the rape of a 17-year-old back in 2008. Now he has been sentenced to 100 years in prison by a Brooklyn judge after sexually assaulting 4 women in 1 week, including a 15-year-old girl. When he was arrested, he was carrying a handwritten note which detailed the dates and times of 2 of the rapes. Bell also sexually assaulted a correction officer earlier this year while being moved from Rikers Island. Let's take a look at the quote here from the Brooklyn DA, Ken Thompson. This serial rapist who committed 4 rapes within 1 week, including one of a 15-year-old girl, is a sadistic and violent sexual predator who is simply not fit to walk the streets ever again. That's why he must spend the rest of his life behind bars. So let's talk about the sentence, right? By being sentenced to 100 years, what are we saying? Are we saying this man can never be rehabilitated? What if the problem is that he didn't know rape was wrong? What if the problem is mental illness? From a psychological perspective, it's actually pretty sensible to say the more depraved the crime, the more likely that actually cognitive rehab and mental health help is what is necessary here. And it makes it tough because the more depraved crimes are understandably the ones that people want to see longer prison sentences for. So I don't know. I don't know that this is a particular person who deserves a shot at rehabilitation rather than being permanently removed from society. How do we determine that, Lewis? How do we say, well, this crime is so crazy that you don't deserve a shot at rehabilitation, which is on paper supposedly supposed to be the goal of our justice system, of our incarceration system?
Well, I think in cases like this, in just about every case, I mean, the defense for that person who's accused of a crime is probably going to try and make that argument. I mean, psych evaluations are pretty common in cases like this, and I'm going to assume that that happened here. And I'm also going to assume that it was determined that this person is not insane and just a malicious, evil criminal.
Evil. I mean, that's an interesting way to say it, right? When we talk about evil and when we talk about circumstance, when we know that most of those who commit sexual assault, many were victims of sexual assault themselves. Does being the victim of sexual assault make you evil? How do you become evil?
Plenty of victims of sexual assault never commit those acts themselves. So I can't answer that question, but both types of people exist, Dave, and I think that one is worse than the other.
Factually speaking, life in prison for 4 rapes. Correct sentence? Incorrect sentence?
I would say correct sentence. If what I assume to be, if what I'm assuming about this person is true, then yes, correct sentence.
We've had many stories where we see 30-day sentences for rape,
Or
rapes
no
of
time.
children, no time for rapes of children. Do we see a situation in our criminal justice system where we see too significant of punishments, sentences for nonviolent drug offenses, and not strong enough punishments for violent crime like rape? Or does the entire thing really need to be rebuilt from the ground up? Let me know your thoughts on this one. We have a voicemail number, and that number is 219-2-DAVID-P. Nothing nicer than this voicemail to come back to after Thanksgiving. Take a listen.
I think you look like a couple of fruits that want to destroy America, you liberal bastards. Go get AIDS. Thank you.
There you go. No comment. I present that to you without comment, Lewis. On the bonus show today, Bill Gates will invest $2 billion in a clean energy partnership. The Gods of Egypt trailer catches some heat, and an app that shows you the wireless signals around you. davidpakman.com/membership to sign up. But remember, you can get the 2016 Hatriot Mail Calendar for free with your membership if you sign up at davidpakman.com/calendar16. I will speak to you in mere seconds on the bonus show.
The David Pakman Show at davidpakman.com.